I am Martin Shaw. I am 72 years old, and my hip replacement surgery, which was only supposed to last 3 days, ended up saving my wife's life. I came home a day early. The surgeon said the procedure went perfectly, that I was recovering faster than men half my age. I wanted to surprise Carol. I took a taxi from the hospital, walking stiffly up the driveway of the simple suburban home we had lived in for 40 years. I hadn't called our son Derek. I wanted to see the look on Carol's face. The house was silent, not peaceful. It was the silence of a tomb. A faint sour smell hit me as I opened the door. The smell of sickness. "Carol," I called out, my new hip aching as I moved down the hall. "I'm home early." The silence was absolute. I walked into our bedroom, and I found her. My wife of 45 years, Carol, was lying in bed. Her eyes were closed, her skin a waxy pale gray. Her lips were cracked and bleeding. A glass of water sat on her bedside table, but it was placed just inches beyond where her fingertips could reach. The meal tray I had prepared before I left for the hospital, the one Derek was supposed to give her, was still on the dresser, untouched, rotting. She was dying. She was dying of dehydration and starvation. "Carol!" I screamed, lunging forward, my surgical pain forgotten. I grabbed her hand. It was cold. She moaned a sound so faint it barely stirred the air. Where was Derek? He lived 10 minutes away. He had promised me he would look after her every day. My hand trembled as I pulled out my phone. I needed to call 911. But the screen was already on open to the social media app I rarely used. And there it was. A new post from Derek. Uploaded 1 hour ago. It was a picture of him, my son, 45 years old, raising a champagne glass on a yacht. He was in Marbella, Spain. Beside him, his wealthy, arrogant father-in-law, Gregory Adler, was smiling. The caption beneath the photo stabbed me through the heart. "Finally, I deserve a week without my pathetic old folks." The air left my lungs. My son, my son. I looked at Carol fading away because of his deserved vacation. My thumb hovered over the 911 icon, but I didn't press it. The rage that filled me was so cold, so pure, it was almost clarifying. I scrolled to a number in my contacts listed only as H. "Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice no longer trembling. "Activate everything. Medical priority 1. Now." 10 minutes later, the street was filled not with the sound of sirens, but with the quiet hum of efficiency. A private unmarked ambulance, the kind of rapid response vehicle that doesn't appear on public service logs, pulled into my driveway. It was followed by a black armored sedan. A team of private trauma specialists, not city paramedics, rushed into the house with equipment I hadn't seen since my last visit to a military base. They stabilized Carol, their movements precise, efficient, and silent. As they carried her out on a stretcher, Mr. Harrison stepped out of the sedan. He was immaculate in a $5,000 suit, an earpiece discreetly tucked into his ear. He looked at the humble suburban house, then at me. "Sir, we have been monitoring the situation as requested. Derek is at the Adler Summit. Shall we intervene?" "No," I said, watching the ambulance disappear down the street. "Let him have his week. Let him feel victorious. I want him to believe he has everything to lose." I turned back to the empty, silent house that had been the stage for my greatest failure. "And then, Harrison, we will take back everything." The presidential suite at St. Jude's private wing was a place I had funded but never intended to use. It was soundproof, secure, and miles away from the life I had pretended to live. Carol was sleeping. An IV line slowly dripped fluids back into her body, bringing a faint touch of pink back to her cheeks. Mr. Harrison stood by the window which overlooked the entire city. Dr. Evans, my private physician for 30 years, entered the room, his face grim. He held a tablet displaying Carol's medical charts. "Martin," he said, dispensing with formalities, "I need you to understand the timeline here. Her kidney function was at 12%. Her electrolytes were catastrophically low. This wasn't a case of a 70-year-old woman forgetting to drink water for an afternoon. I braced myself. Tell me. This was at minimum 72 hours of total neglect. No food, no water. Whoever was responsible for her care didn't just forget. They intentionally left her to die. Harrison spoke without turning. The Parkinson's medication, was untouched, Dr. Evans said. Without it, her tremors would have made it impossible for her to reach that glass of water, even if she had the strength. This was deliberate, Martin. Another 24 hours and the kidney failure would have been irreversible. We were that close. Deliberate, intentional, attempted murder. I thanked Evans. He nodded, placed a hand on my shoulder, and left. The silence in the room was heavy. They tried to kill her, Harrison. I whispered the words, tasting like ash. Yes, sir. And we believe this was not the first attempt. I sat in the visitor's chair, the plush velvet feeling wrong against my simple hospital-issued clothes. I looked at Carol, the woman who had agreed to this charade with me 45 years ago. When I sold Oracle Systems Solutions, the data mining company I built from nothing in my garage, I did it quietly. I walked away from the board meetings, the billions, the power. I was tired of that world. I wanted my son Derek to grow up normal. I wanted him to be a good man, not a rich man's entitled heir. So I created a fiction. Martin Shaw, retired history teacher. Carol Shaw, retired nurse. We lived in our modest starter home. We drove a 10-year-old car. We lived on a fixed pension. It was a test, a 45-year experiment to see what kind of man my son would become without the corrupting influence of wealth. And as I sat there, the results of my experiment were horrifyingly clear. I remembered 6 months ago, Carol's accidental fall down the stairs. Nicole, my daughter-in-law, had been there. Oh, Martin, she'd said, her eyes wide with fake sympathy. She just slipped. She's getting so frail. Carol broke her wrist. Derek had sighed. We really need to think about a nursing home, Dad. I remembered 3 months ago. My heart medication. I felt dizzy, disoriented for 2 days. I found my daily pill organizer filled with Carol's sleeping pills. Derek had helped me fill it that week. Dad, you're getting senile. He laughed it off. You must have mixed them up yourself. See, you can't even manage your own pills. And then last week, the garden. Derek was helping me trim the rose bushes. I tripped over a rake left directly in my path. Watch out for the rake, Dad, he yelled a half-second after I had fallen. The fall that shattered my hip. The fall that put me in the hospital. My blood ran cold. The hip surgery wasn't just an accident. It was the goal. It was the opportunity. They needed me out of the house. They needed me incapacitated so they could execute their plan for Carol. They weren't just waiting for us to die. They were speeding up the process. My cheap retiree cell phone buzzed. It was Derek calling from Spain. I looked at Harrison. He discreetly tapped the recording app on his own device. I took a deep breath, trying to summon the voice of the frail, simple-minded father he thought I was. Derek, is everything all right, son? Dad, I'm in a meeting. Why did you call me? His voice was sharp, annoyed. Did you get out of the hospital? You're not supposed to be home until tomorrow. Carol is in the hospital, I said, letting my voice crack slightly. Son, she almost died. She was dehydrated, starved. There was a pause, not a gasp of horror. It was a cold, calculating silence. What? He finally said, his voice instantly shifting to practiced concern. Oh my God, is it her Parkinson's? Did she forget her meds again? Did she forget to eat, Dad? I told you this would happen. He was blaming her, instantly. You were supposed to be checking on her. I said, my voice barely a whisper. You promised me Derek. And I did. He snapped, the mask slipping. I checked on her before I left. She was fine. Look, Dad, I know you're upset, but you don't understand the pressure I'm under. This is the Adler Summit. Gregory Adler himself. This is the deal of a lifetime. I can't just drop everything because Mom forgets to drink water. You're in Marbella, I stated. Yes, for work, he shouted. For the future of our family. You have to be realistic, Dad. I told you we needed to put her in a home. She's a burden. We can talk about this when I get back. He hung up. He didn't ask which hospital. He didn't ask if she was alive. I stared at the phone. Harrison quietly stopped the recording. Our family. I repeated the words, feeling foreign. He meant his family. We're just the obstacle. Worse than that, sir, Harrison said, opening his iPad. We've been monitoring his activity as requested ever since the medication incident. The situation is dire. He turned the screen toward me. First, Derek was fired from his brokerage firm 6 months ago. What? He told me he got a promotion. He was fired for inappropriate financial activities. Embezzlement, essentially. He's been unemployed ever since. Harrison swiped to another screen. It was a series of bank statements and online logs. Second, and more pressing, he is in debt. Deeply. $300,000. $200,000 to various Vegas casinos. $100,000 to, let's call them private lenders in Atlantic City. They have given him a final deadline. Next week. My God. I had no idea. The trip to Spain, I whispered, is a last-ditch effort, Harrison finished. He is not there on business. He is there to defraud his father-in-law. We've analyzed his communications. He's pitching Adler on a fictitious green tech fund. He needs $500,000 fast. $300,000 to pay his debts, and $200,000 for him and Nicole to disappear. He's defrauding his own wife's family, I said, the sickness rising in my throat. Which brings us to his social media post, Harrison said, tapping the photo of Derek on the yacht. Gregory Adler is a ruthless man. Our profile on him indicates he believes family and sentiment are weaknesses. Derek's post about his pathetic old folks wasn't just an insult, sir. It was performative cruelty. He was signaling to Adler that he is just as ruthless, that he has cut ties with his weak origins. He sacrificed his mother for a business pitch. But it gets worse, Harrison said. His voice was grim. When he realized he couldn't get money from you, he activated Plan A. He swiped again. On the screen was a document, a power of attorney. My signature was forged at the bottom. He tried to file for a reverse mortgage on your house last week. He planned to drain the equity and leave you with the debt. But the bank never contacted me. Because we blocked it, Harrison said simply. Our legal team at Keystone Commercial Bank, which, as you know, you own, flagged the signature as fraudulent. We placed an indefinite hold on the application without notifying the applicant. He believes it is merely delayed in processing. I looked at Harrison and then at my sleeping wife. For 45 years, I had built a fortress of wealth around my family, all while pretending we lived in a simple cottage. And in his greed, my son had just declared war on the fortress, not knowing I was the king inside. Harrison put the iPad away. When Plan A stalled and his creditor's deadline approached, your hip surgery became his perfect opportunity. He couldn't get the money from the house, so he decided to get the money from the life insurance. He let the words sink in. The starvation of Mrs. Shaw was not Plan B, sir. It was the only option he had left. I was watching the rhythmic, reassuring beep of the heart monitor when her eyelids fluttered. Mr. Harrison, who had been standing like a statue in the corner of the suite, took a subtle, respectful step back, fading into the shadows of the luxurious room. Carol's eyes opened. At first they were cloudy, unfocused. Then they found me. But I saw no relief in them. I saw no comfort. I saw only pure, unadulterated terror. She tried to scream, but only a dry, rasping sound escaped her cracked lips. She flinched violently, pulling her weak hand away from mine. She tried to push herself back against the pillows, her body trembling. No, she whispered, her voice hoarse. No, he'll see you. He'll know you're here. You have to hide. Martin, please hide. She thought Derek was still in control. Carol, my love. I gently took her hand, forcing her to focus on me. It's me. It's Martin. You're safe. We're at St. Jude's. You're safe now. Derek is not here. She stared at me, her mind clearly struggling to bridge the gap between her trauma and this new reality. Martin, she whispered. But the surgery. You're supposed to be. He said you wouldn't be back. I came home early. I said, my voice thick with an emotion I refused to name. I found you, Carol. I found you. Her face crumpled. The terror was instantly replaced by a wave of agonizing comprehension. The dam of her silence broke, and she began to sob weak, dry sobs that shook her entire frame. He locked me in, she cried, clutching my hand. He locked me in, Martin. I saw Mr. Harrison in my periphery. His hand was in his suit pocket. His thumb had depressed a small button. The digital audio recorder was active. Tell me everything, I said, stroking her thin, matted hair. Tell me exactly what happened after I left for the hospital. She closed her eyes as if replaying the nightmare was a physical effort. He was so kind at first, she whispered. Derek. He came over right after you left. He brought me tea. He told me he would handle everything. He said he would check on me 3 times a day. He promised. She took a shaky breath, the monitors beeping in response to her agitation. The first day, he came. He brought the food you had left, but he was agitated. He was on his phone, constantly whispering in the hallway. Angry. And the second day, I prompted, keeping my voice impasse bootcut. He didn't come, she cried. I waited all day, Martin. The glass of water. It was empty by noon. I called for him. I called until my throat was sore, but he didn't answer. I tried to get up, she continued, her voice breaking. I really tried. But the Parkinson's. My legs wouldn't obey. I couldn't reach the glass. I couldn't reach the phone. Her voice dropped. I thought I had just missed him. I thought he would come, but then he came back. Late that night. What did he do, Carol? He stood in the doorway. He just stood there. I begged him, Martin. I begged him for water. I told him I was so thirsty. He just looked at me. His eyes were so cold. It wasn't my son. I felt my jaw tighten until my teeth ached. He smiled, she whispered. He smiled at me. He said, just rest, Mom. Everything is being taken care of. And then, she was shaking violently now, and I motioned for the nurse who was waiting just outside the door. She quickly and silently checked the IV. And then, Carol continued, he picked up my cell phone from the nightstand. The emergency phone you always leave me. He put it in his pocket. I screamed at him. Derek, no, what are you doing? I need that. He just patted his pocket, and he said, I know, it's better this way. No distractions for you, Mom. And then he left, and I heard it. Heard what, my love? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The key. I heard the key turn in the lock, from the outside. She was sobbing openly now, a raw, terrified sound. He locked me in my own bedroom, Martin. He left me there to die. I held my breath. Harrison remained a statue by the window, his function only to bear witness. Did he say anything else, Carol? I needed the final piece. Anything at all? She looked at me, her eyes suddenly sharp, clear with the horrifying memory of the betrayal. Yes, she said. The last time he was there, when he took the phone. I asked him why. I asked him what he wanted. I asked him if this was about the house. She paused, gathering her last bit of strength. He looked at me, Martin. He didn't even try to hide it. He said, "If Dad won't give me the house, then I'll take it another way." Her voice dropped to a barely audible whisper, mimicking the coldness of our son. "You'll go to a nursing home. Dad will have to pay for it. And I'll take the rest." The words hung in the sterile air of the room. It wasn't just murder for inheritance. It was a complex, layered plan. Use his mother's death as leverage forced me to liquidate the house to pay for a nursing home that she would never live to see, and then claim the remaining assets. It was a plan of pure, unadulterated evil. Carol was exhausted, her story finally told. Her eyes drifted closed, the monitor's rhythm steadying slightly. "You're safe now," I whispered, kissing her damp forehead. "I'm here, and I will handle this." I stood up and walked over to Mr. Harrison. He had already stopped the recording. "We have it," he said, his voice a low professional murmur. "The testimony recorded, timed, and witnessed by medical staff. It is more than enough to establish intent." "Good," I said, my voice flat, devoid of the emotion that was raging inside me. I walked back to the window and looked out at the city. I owned a city my son believed I could barely afford to live in. "Now, Harrison," I said, turning back to him, "tell me everything you know about this Adler summit in Spain." I stood up from Carol's bedside, my new hip aching a dull, mechanical throb that anchored me to the horrifying present. Mr. Harrison remained by the door, a silent statue in a perfect suit. He knew to wait. I walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling window of the private suite. 30 floors below, the city sprawled out, a glittering map of lights, traffic, and commerce. A world that was buzzing, unaware of the quiet evil that had just been confessed in this room. My son Derek always assumed I looked at that view with a kind of sad longing. He believed the fiction I had carefully crafted. He saw Martin Shaw, the retired history teacher, a man who lived a small beige life, forever looking at a world he could never touch. He thought I was the man who worried about our fixed pension, who felt the pinch of rising grocery prices, who was trapped in a simple suburban house that was his only real asset. He called me pathetic. He posted it on the internet for the world to see. What my son never knew, what I never allowed him to know, is that I don't just look at that view. I own it. I own the bank in that glittering blue tower to the left. I own the data center that powers the entire financial district. I own the hospital I am standing in. I am not Martin Shaw, the teacher. That man is a ghost, a fiction, a role I created 45 years ago when Derek was just a baby learning to walk. My name is Martin Shaw, yes, but I am that Martin Shaw, the one who in a dusty Palo Alto garage with a college roommate wrote the foundational code for what became Oracle Systems Solutions. OSS, the quiet giant of cloud computing, the multi-billion-dollar corporation that securely processes half of the world's financial transactions. I retired 20 years ago. I cashed out my majority shares anonymously. The tech world thought the founder was a recluse, a ghost. The truth was, I was just a father hiding in plain sight in a suburb in Ohio. Carol and I made a choice, a profound one. We had seen what unearned generational wealth does to children. We watched our friends' kids grow up entitled, hollow, morally bankrupt, waiting for an inheritance they never worked for, becoming parasites in expensive suits. We refused to let that happen to Derek. So we began the experiment. We stayed in our starter home. We drove the 10-year-old car. We cooked our own meals. We lived the simple, quiet life of a retired teacher and a retired nurse. I gave him a middle-class life to see what kind of man he would become without wealth. I wanted him to learn the value of a dollar earned, not a dollar given. I wanted him to develop character, empathy, a moral compass. I wanted him to build his own life, to be proud of his own accomplishments, not mine. I wanted him to be a good man. I looked down at the city lights, the experiment now concluded. And now I know. For 45 years, I ran a test on my only son. And he has failed. He didn't just fail. He failed in the most spectacular, devastating way imaginable. He failed by conspiring with his greedy, ambitious wife. He failed by forging my name on legal documents. He failed by trying to steal the meager assets of a poor old man. And he failed finally and irrevocably by abandoning his own mother to die a slow, agonizing death, all for a $500,000 house. The irony is so thick I can barely breathe. He is in Spain right now begging his father-in-law, Gregory Adler, for $500,000. He's trying to defraud a man who in turn is a priority client at my private bank in Zurich. He's trying to sell a house that he doesn't know is already held in a trust managed by my asset firm. He posted his betrayal on a social media platform that runs on servers hosted by my former company. He is a rat trapped in a maze of his own making, and he doesn't even realize that I am the one who built the maze. He thought I was a burden. He thought his mother was an obstacle. He thought we were pathetic. He has no idea what is about to happen. He has no idea who I really am. I turned away from the window. The grief I felt in the ambulance was gone. The shock I felt at Carol's bedside was gone. All that remained was a cold, hard, perfect clarity. The clarity of a chairman of the board about to liquidate a toxic asset. Carol stirred in her sleep safe. She would be protected. I looked at Mr. Harrison. He met my gaze. He didn't need to ask. He had been my most trusted advisor for 20 years. He had been waiting for this call. "Harrison," I said. My voice was different. The frail, hesitant tone of the history teacher was gone. This was the voice that used to command boardrooms. "It is time. I want you to prepare 3 orders, immediately." I stood up from Carol's bedside, the dull throb in my hip, a physical reminder of my son's betrayal. "Mr. Harrison, my advisor, my confidant." The man who knew the real Martin Shaw stood near the door, his posture one of perfect professional stillness. He had been waiting for these orders for a very long time. "Harrison," I said. My voice was low, but it held none of the frail uncertainty of the retired teacher I had been pretending to be. This was the voice that had built Oracle Systems Solutions from a garage startup into a global powerhouse. "The experiment is over. It is time to liquidate the asset." Harrison simply inclined his head, his iPad already in hand. "Your orders, sir." "First, my son Derek." I walked to the window, looking down at the city 30 floors below. The lights of the financial district glittered. My financial district. Derek believes he is a wolf. He believes he is a player. He tried to forge my signature on a power of attorney to commit wire fraud against a bank that I own. He is attempting to defraud his father-in-law by soliciting funds for a non-existent company. I want the full weight of the United States government to fall on him. Harrison's fingers tapped the screen. "The IRS or the SEC, sir?" "Both," I said. "I want the IRS Criminal Investigation Division to receive a full anonymous tip regarding his financial situation. I want them to see the discrepancy. A man claiming a $60,000 salary who suddenly has $300,000 in gambling debts. I want them to audit every penny he has touched for the last 5 years. It will be done, sir. The file is prepared." And the SEC continued, turning from the window. "He is in Spain right now actively committing securities fraud. He is pitching a ghost fund. I want that file on the desk of the regional director by noon. I want the words wire fraud, elder abuse, and forgery to be the first things they read tomorrow morning. When his plane lands, if he is allowed to board one, I want federal agents, not local police, waiting for him at the gate." Harrison tapped the screen twice. "The SEC file is uploaded, sir. It includes the forged POA, the fraudulent reverse mortgage application, and the security flags from Keystone Bank. It will be marked for immediate review by our contacts." I nodded, feeling the first cold tendril of satisfaction. He wanted to play in the big leagues, I murmured. Welcome to the show. I took a breath. The first order was clinical. This next one was personal. Second, the Adler Summit. This performance. This obscene post about his pathetic old folks. He wanted an audience for his cruelty. I will give him a global one. Harrison looked up. The only sign of his surprise was a slightly raised eyebrow. Sir, that will mean exposing your identity. The press. The charade is over, Harrison. My anonymity was a shield for him. He doesn't deserve it anymore. I want the complete audio file of Carol's testimony. Every word, especially the quote about the nursing home and taking the rest, sent to the organizers of that summit. I want it sent to every major news outlet in Marbella, New York and London. Reuters, the Associated Press, the Wall Street Journal. Everyone. The headline, sir, Harrison asked, his fingers already drafting the release. Son of tech billionaire Martin Shaw leaves mother to starve while pitching fake fund in Spain. Harrison permitted himself the barest hint of a smile. That is precise, sir. I want more. Send them the medical report from Dr. Evans detailing Carol's acute dehydration and kidney failure. Send them the proof of Derek's $300,000 gambling debt. Send them the picture from his social media, the champagne, the yacht, the smile side by side with a photo of this hospital. I want Gregory Adler to see those alerts light up on his phone while my son is still standing on that stage. I want every potential investor in that room to know they are listening to a man who tried to murder his own mother for pocket change. The release will hit the European wires by midnight Madrid time, Harrison said. It will be a global story before breakfast here. Good, I said. Derek wanted to be ruthless like Adler. He wanted to cut ties. Fine, I will cut them for him, with a blowtorch. I sat down in the chair, the surgical pain in my hip, momentarily forgotten, replaced by the sharp, focused energy of a CEO during a hostile takeover. And finally Harrison, Gregory Adler, the man my son idolizes, the man who taught him that family is a weakness. Tell me what we have on him. This time Harrison's smile was genuine. It was the smile of a predator who has cornered its prey. Mr. Adler is a special case, sir. As you know, our private bank in Zurich, the one that caters to specialized clients, has handled his portfolio for 5 years. I remembered. Adler, the self-made real estate mogul. He had come to us through several shell corporations 5 years ago. He was over-leveraged, desperate for liquidity to expand into the Asian market. He has an outstanding cross-collateralized loan against his entire global empire. Harrison continued, his voice smooth as silk. $200 million. He believes his loan is with a standard Swiss consortium. He has no idea that the consortium is a holding company owned by you. You are, and have been for 5 years, his sole creditor. I leaned forward. This was better than I remembered. The terms, Harrison. Tell me the terms. Standard for the most part, except for one small bespoke clause our legal team is famous for. Clause 11b, the reputational integrity clause. We often refer to it as the morality clause. Go on. It states, Harrison said, savoring the words, that if the borrower, Mr. Adler, is found to be engaged in or knowingly associated with activities deemed fraudulent, criminal, or morally bankrupt, the lender reserves the right to call the entire $200 million loan due, in full, immediately. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. Knowingly associated with, I repeated, such as publicly associating with a man who is at this very moment trying to defraud him and who has just been credibly accused of attempting to murder his mother. It would seem to fit the criteria perfectly, sir. Derek went to Spain to get Adler's money, I mused. Instead, I think I'll take all of Adler's money. The man Derek idolized, he'll be bankrupt by morning. I looked at Harrison. He was waiting. Make the call, Harrison. Harrison did not use his iPad. He pulled a sleek encrypted satellite phone from his pocket. He dialed a single number. "This is Harrison," he said, his voice crisp. "Execute Protocol 11B on client file Adler. Yes, immediately. Liquidate all assets for collection." He listened for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you." He hung up and placed the phone back in his pocket. "It is done, sir. The SEC file has been uploaded. The press release is scheduled, and Mr. Adler's financial world will cease to exist in approximately 10 minutes. I turned back to the bed to my wife. Carol was breathing deeply now, the color returning to her face. She was safe. "Good," I said, my voice a low growl. "That's a start." The flight to Marbella is 17 hours. 17 hours for my son to sip champagne, to watch movies, to dream of the $500,000 fraud he was about to commit. 17 hours while his mother, my Carol, lay in a hospital bed, her kidneys failing. I know exactly what that ballroom in Spain looks like. I've stayed at that resort. I own the holding company that financed that resort. It is opulent. Gold leaf ceilings, crystal chandeliers, a sea of black tuxedos and designer dresses. At the front of the room, Gregory Adler sits like a Roman emperor, his daughter Nicole, my daughter-in-law, at his side. They are royalty. And on the stage at the center of the Adler Investment Summit is my son, Derek Shaw. He is wearing a new suit, a $3,000 suit, I know, because it was charged to one of the fraudulent credit cards Harrison found. He looks confident. He looks powerful. He looks like everything he has ever wanted to be. He taps the microphone. The room falls silent. "Thank you, Gregory," he says, his voice smooth. "It is an honor to be here among titans." I can picture him. I can see the shark-like smile he learned from his father-in-law. "The future," Derek begins, "is not for the timid. The future is for the bold, the innovators, the men who are willing to do what others are not." He paces the stage. He owns it. People talk about legacy. They talk about family. They talk about the past. I say the past is an anchor. I say legacy is a burden. To truly succeed, to reach the heights that Mr. Adler has reached, you must be willing to make the hard choices. He pauses, letting the weight of his wisdom settle on the room. "Success requires sacrifice," he says, looking directly at Gregory Adler. "Sometimes you have to be willing to cut the dead weight from your life. You have to be willing to sever the ties that hold you back. You must be willing to sacrifice your pathetic, weak origins to achieve your ultimate destiny." The words hit the air just as the press release authorized by me hits the global wire services. As Derek speaks about cutting dead weight, the phones of 3 journalists in the back row begin to buzz almost silently. They look down. Their eyes widen. Derek doesn't see this. He is lost in his own performance. "And that is what my Green Tech Fund represents," he continues. "It represents the future, a future unburdened by..." The massive oak doors at the back of the ballroom swing open. They don't just open. They are flung open, slamming against the marble walls. The sound echoes through the hall like a gunshot. Every head in the room turns. Derek stops mid-sentence, his mouth open. Standing in the doorway are 2 men in the dark green, instantly recognizable uniforms of the Spanish Guardia Civil. They are armed. Between them stands a 3rd man, shorter, in a sharp, dark American suit. A federal agent. The music stops. The whispering stops. The 3 men begin to walk down the long aisle, their footsteps heavy on the plush carpet. It is a long walk, agonizing. They are not rushing. They are methodical. Derek is frozen. He looks to Gregory Adler. Adler looks at the door, his expression not one of fear, but of pure, unadulterated rage. He thinks this is an interruption of his event. "What is the meaning of this?" Adler barks at the approaching men. "I have security. Get them out." The men do not stop. They do not look at Adler. They walk directly to the stage, parting the crowd, and stop at the steps. The federal agent looks up at my son. Derek Shaw. Derek's voice is a squeak. Yes, I'm in the middle of a presentation. The agent holds up his badge. Derek Shaw, you are under arrest by request of the United States government. A collective gasp sucks the air from the room. Nicole stands up. Arrest? What are you talking about? This is a mistake. The federal agent ignores her. He and the two Guardia Civil officers walk onto the stage. You are being charged, the agent says, his voice calm, clear, and amplified soon by the microphone Derek just used, with 3 counts of wire fraud conspiracy to commit elder abuse felony forgery, and, he checks his notes, attempted murder. Derek's face collapses. What murder? No, that's insane. One of the Spanish officers pulls Derek's hands behind his back. The sharp metallic click of the handcuffs echoes through the ballroom's sound system. It is the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. The room erupts. Cameras flash. The journalists who had been checking their phones are now scrambling, shouting, Mr. Shaw, did you try to kill your mother? Is it true about the $300,000 in gambling debts? Derek looks completely bewildered. How do you know that? Gregory, he screams, turning to his father-in-law. Do something. This is a mistake. It's a lie. Gregory Adler is on his feet. He is purple with rage. This is an outrage. I will have your jobs. This man is my guest. What is this nonsense about elder abuse? Sir, the federal agent says calmly, I suggest you check your phone. The press release just went public. And right on cue, every phone in the ballroom, including Gregory Adler's, begins to buzz. An explosion of notifications. Adler snatches his phone from the table. He looks at the screen. He is reading the headline I wrote myself. Son of tech billionaire Martin Shaw leaves mother to starve while pitching fake fund in Spain. Adler looks up from the phone, his eyes wide with confusion. He looks at me. No, he looks at Derek. Billionaire, Adler whispers. Martin Shaw, Oracle Systems, Martin Shaw. Derek is shaking his head, trying to pull away from the guards. No, it's not true. He's a teacher. A pathetic old teacher. He has nothing. But the journalists are already reading the facts from the wire service. Mr. Adler, one shouts. Is it true Mr. Shaw's fund is fraudulent? Were you aware he was $300,000 in debt? Adler stumbles back, looking at Derek with a new dawning horror. He realizes he wasn't vetting a protege. He was being conned by a desperate, pathetic amateur. Get him out of here, Adler growls at the police. Get this fraud out of my sight. But just as he says it, just as Derek is being pushed off the stage, Adler's phone rings. It's not a text buzz. It's a ring, a specific encrypted ringtone. Adler looks at the caller ID. Zurich. His anger vanishes, replaced by cold fear. He knows that number. One moment, he hisses at the agent. He answers the call. Yes, he listens. His face, which was purple with rage, turns a chalky, sickly white. The hand holding the phone begins to tremble. What do you mean? Call the loan. He listens again. No, that's impossible. The full 200 million now. Why? He listens. What morality clause? I can picture the precise cold voice of my banker on the other end. Clause 11B, Mr. Adler. Knowingly associating with criminal elements. The full amount is due in 24 hours, or we seize all assets, globally. You can't, Adler screams into the phone. That's my entire empire. That's everything. Who is this? Who are you working for? He listens one last time, and I know what my banker just told him. The lender's name, Mr. Adler. The man you've owed money to for 5 years, his name is Martin Shaw. Have a pleasant day. Adler's phone slips from his fingers and clatters onto the marble floor. He doesn't faint. He just deflates. His entire body, his arrogance, his power, it all evaporates. He slumps into his chair, a ruined hollow shell. Derek, halfway to the door, watches this. He sees his father-in-law, his savior, his idol utterly destroyed. He sees the journalists who have now turned their cameras away from him and toward Adler, realizing that is the bigger story. Derek finally understands. He's lost everything. His savior is gone. His wife is ruined. His inheritance was a fantasy. He stops fighting the guards. He just screams. It's a raw animal sound of pure despair. "Gregory, help me!" he wails as they drag him out of the ballroom. "It was my father, the pathetic old man. He set me up. He framed me. He did this." Gregory Adler doesn't hear him. He is just staring blankly at the far wall, a man who just found out the pathetic old folks he scorned had just foreclosed on his entire life. 2 men destroyed in less than 5 minutes, all by the simple act of a phone call. The trap, Harrison, was perfect. 3 days. 72 hours since I watched my son, my only child, get dragged off a stage in handcuffs, screaming my name like a curse. It took Nicole exactly 48 of those hours to liquidate every asset she had. She sold the condo her father had given her, she emptied her trust funds, she sold the jewelry from her body. All of it just to meet the staggering multi-million-dollar bail requirement to fly Derek back to the United States. They were not at their luxury apartment, which was already being seized by Gregory Adler's creditors. They were not at a lawyer's office. They were coming here, to my house. I had insisted on it. Carol and I were not in the sterile luxury of the hospital suite. We were waiting for them in the modest suburban home they despised. I wanted this confrontation to happen here, in this simple living room with the faded floral sofa and the worn-out carpet. I wanted them to be surrounded by the poverty they held in such contempt when the final crushing truth came down upon them. Carol was sitting in her favorite armchair, a quilted blanket over her lap. She was no longer the frail, dying woman from the hospital bed. Her eyes were sharp. The Parkinson's was now correctly medicated, but it was more than that. A quiet, righteous anger had given her a strength I hadn't seen in years. She looked like an empress sitting on a simple throne. I stood by the fireplace, my hips still aching, staring at the empty mantel where we used to keep cheap, framed photos of Derek. We heard the car, a sputtering cheap rental, not their leased BMW. The car door slammed with a sound that vibrated with suppressed violence. The front door didn't just open, it was kicked open, the cheap wood shuddering in its frame. Derek stormed in first. He was a wreck. The $3,000 suit he had worn in Marbella was wrinkled and stained. His hair was a mess, his eyes bloodshot and wild. He looked like a cornered animal, rabid and desperate. "Dad!" he roared. The name was not a greeting. It was an accusation. "What did you do?" He was vibrating with a white-hot fury. "You ruined me. You heard me. You ruined me. You destroyed Gregory. You destroyed Nicole. You destroyed everything." Nicole stumbled in behind him, looking just as disheveled. The mask of her perfect, polished life was gone. Her makeup was smeared from crying. Her expensive hair extensions were tangled. She was a woman who had just seen her entire world and her entire future liquidated. She looked at me and her rage was different from Derek's. It wasn't the rage of a son betrayed. It was the raw, primal fury of a scavenger who had just had her prize snatched away. "You lied!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "All this time, this dump, these clothes, you lied to us. You have money, you pathetic old man. You had money all along." Her entire body shook with the force of her accusation. It was the word money that made her voice crack. That was all it had ever been. She wasn't horrified that her husband had tried to murder his parents. She was incandescent with rage that we hadn't been the easy, poor victims she thought we were. "We were supposed to be family," she sobbed, but there were no tears. It was a dry, hysterical sound of pure frustration. "We were supposed to help each other. You just sat there and watched us. You let us struggle. You let Derek. She suddenly turned on Derek, her eyes narrowing. And you, she spat at him. You told me he was just a teacher. You told me this house was all he had. You said we just had to wait him out. You said he was pathetic. He is! Derek roared back, his panic making him stupid. He is pathetic, hiding in this mausoleum his whole life. This is his fault. He made me do it. He turned his wild eyes back to me. You ruined me. I had a deal. I had Adler. He was going to set me up for life, and you with your pathetic hospital drama, you blew it. You destroyed my reputation, all because of her. He took a step, pointing a shaking finger at Carol, at his mother, the woman he had systematically calmly left to die of thirst. All because she was too lazy to get herself a glass of water. That was it. That was the line. For 45 years I had been Martin Shaw, the teacher, the father, the quiet, unassuming, gentle man. I had built a persona of patient understanding and harmless wisdom. That man died in that instant. I turned from the fireplace. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move a muscle except to meet his gaze. Sit down, Derek. The voice that came out of my mouth was not the one he knew. It was not the warm, slightly reedy voice of his father. It was the voice that had built Oracle Systems solutions. It was the voice that had commanded boardrooms of sharks, the voice that had brokered billion-dollar deals, the voice that had dismantled entire corporate divisions before breakfast. It was the voice that hadn't been used in my own home for 20 years, but it had lost none of its edge. It was low. It was flat. It was heavy with the absolute non-negotiable weight of pure compressed power. Derek stopped. He physically recoiled as if I had struck him. His mouth, which had been open in a snarl, snapped shut with an audible click. Nicole, who was winding up for another shriek, froze. The sound died in her throat. The very air in the room changed. The shabby, unassuming living room suddenly felt like an execution chamber. The ceiling felt low. Derek's fury, his bluster, his entire performance of the aggrieved victim, it all collapsed. It evaporated as if a switch had been flicked. All that was left was the quivering, confused, primal fear of a little boy who had just run full speed into a wall of solid granite he never knew was there. He was looking at a stranger. What? What did you say? He stammered. His voice was suddenly a full octave higher. I did not move. I did not blink. I simply held his gaze. I repeated each word, landing like a hammer blow on stone. Sit down, now. He flinched, and he obeyed. He didn't just sit. He fell. He collapsed backward onto the faded floral sofa, the one he had always despised, the one he had tried to sell from under me. Nicole watched him. She saw her husband, her partner in crime, instantly reduced to a trembling, obedient child. Her mind, quick and calculating, tried to recalibrate. The power dynamic of her entire world had just been rewritten in 2 seconds. She scrambled to sit in the armchair opposite him, her hands clasping each other so tightly, her knuckles were white. They stared at me. Two rats in a trap who had just realized the simple trap was far more complex, and the owner of the house was not who they thought he was. I let the silence stretch. I let them sit in it. I let them suffocate in it. Carol watched them both, her face serene. She was no longer the victim. She was the judge. Finally, Derek spoke, his voice a hoarse, terrified whisper. Dad, what is this? Who are you? Derek's voice was a dry, rasping sound from the back of his throat. Dad, who are you? He was staring at me, but he wasn't seeing me. He was seeing the stranger who had just spoken, the man whose voice had frozen the blood in his veins. He was searching my face, trying to find the frail, simple-minded history teacher he had dominated for the last decade. He found no one he recognized. Nicole was rigid, her knuckles white where she gripped the arm of the chair. She was the smart one. She was the one who worked in finance. Her mind was racing, trying to recalibrate the sudden, impossible shift in power. "Derek, what is he talking about?" she hissed. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, a new sound entered the room. A quiet, polite cough. It came from the kitchen doorway. Derek and Nicole both jumped their heads, snapping toward the sound. They thought we were alone. They always thought I was alone. Mr. Harrison stepped into the living room. He wasn't dressed like a visitor. He was dressed in his uniform, a flawless dark gray suit that probably cost more than Derek's car. He held a small silver tray. On the tray was not coffee or tea. There was an iPad and a small digital audio recorder. Derek stared at him, his confusion battling his fading arrogance. "Who the hell are you, the gardener? What is this?" "This is Mr. Harrison," I said calmly. "He handles my affairs." Nicole let out a short, sharp laugh, but it sounded more like a bark of hysteria. "Affairs," she spat. "What affairs? You're a retired teacher living on a pension. What does he handle, your monthly Social Security check?" "Something like that," Harrison replied, his voice chillingly neutral. He walked past them and placed the tray on the coffee table. He looked at them with the polite disinterest of a man looking at a flawed financial statement. "You were both so distressed upon arrival," Harrison said. "You didn't give us a chance to offer you refreshments, or to play you this." He tapped the digital recorder. The silence of the room was shattered not by a loud noise but by their own voices. It was the recording from 3 weeks ago. The one Harrison had captured from the security devices I had him install after the medication incident. It was their Plan B conversation. First, Nicole's voice, sharp and greedy. "He won't sign the power of attorney. The old man is being stubborn. The bank, my bank, blocked the mortgage application." Derek's voice, my son's voice, filled the room full of impatience. "Then we have to accelerate Plan B. My hip surgery is the perfect cover. While I'm in the hospital, we handle her. We make her disappear." Nicole's real-life face, the one in my living room, had turned the color of ash. Nicole's voice recording, "Disappear." "Derek, that's messy. It's risky." Derek's voice recording, "Not if she's senile. It's simple. We just stop helping. She's a frail old woman with Parkinson's. How long can she last without her meds or water? 3 days, 4. By the time Dad gets back, he'll find his confused, senile wife dead in her bed. A tragedy. He'll be so heartbroken. He'll sign anything we put in front of him, including the papers to commit himself." Harrison pressed the stop button. The only sound in the room was Derek's ragged, shallow breathing. He was hyperventilating. Nicole was staring at the small black recorder as if it were a venomous snake. "You!" she finally shrieked, finding her voice. "You! That's illegal. You recorded us. We will sue you. That's an invasion of privacy." "That recording was made in my house, Nicole," I corrected her quietly. "In the kitchen, where my advisor had placed security measures because we already knew you were a threat." "Advisor," she spat the word dripping with venom. "Security measures. Who do you think you are? You are a pathetic old man in a pathetic old house. You have nothing. You're nobody." I looked at her. I truly looked at her for the first time. I saw the cheap ambition, the desperate need to be superior, the brittle facade she had built. "You are right about one thing," I said, my voice cutting through her rising hysteria. "I am old." I took a step forward. Derek flinched away from me. "But I am not pathetic, and I do not have nothing." I let the words hang in the air. "You thought you were so smart, didn't you? You, Nicole, a junior analyst at a second-rate firm. You, Derek, an unemployed broker drowning in gambling debt trying to con your own family." I shook my head, a feeling of immense cold sadness washing over me. "You thought you were outsmarting a retired history teacher." I paused, letting them feel the shift. "You weren't trying to steal a $500,000 house from a retiree Derek. You were trying to defraud and then murder the founder and retired chairman of Oracle Systems Solutions. Derek just stared. His face was blank. The name meant nothing to him. He was too ignorant, too self-absorbed, to have ever read a business journal, to have ever asked his father a single question about his life before he was dad. But Nicole knew. Her body went completely unnaturally still. Her eyes wide with a new, dawning, unimaginable horror locked onto my face. "Oh, she whispered. Her voice was thin, a tiny thread of sound. Oracle. Systems. Solutions, no. That's impossible. The founder he's anonymous. He's a recluse. His name is..." She trailed off. Her sharp financial mind was flying, connecting dots she had never seen before. The name, the age, the retirement, and I saw the exact moment the calculation completed itself in her brain. I saw the moment she found the name she was looking for. Martin. Shaw. Her head swiveled toward Derek. The look on her face was not just shock. It was a profound, agonizing, universe-shattering realization of the scale of their mistake. It wasn't a $500,000 house they had fumbled. It was billions. She didn't scream at me. She screamed at him. "You idiot!" She lunged at him on the sofa. Her hands clawed, her polished nails raking at his face. "You absolute stupid idiot!" She was hitting him, pounding on his chest, hysterical. "You told me he was nothing. You told me he was pathetic. You are the son of Martin Shaw. And you tried to steal his house." Derek, stunned, just took the blows, his arms up. I didn't know. How could I know? He's just Dad." "He's not just Dad," Nicole shrieked, pulling her own hair. "He's one of the richest men in the world. He owns half of the cloud, and you tried to kill his wife. We could have had everything, and you idiot." She collapsed onto the floor, not in defeat, but in a true agonizing breakdown, sobbing with the catastrophic grief of lost unearned wealth. And Derek finally understood. The revelation of the money, the realization of what he had thrown away, crashed down on him. He looked past his shrieking wife. He looked at me. He no longer saw a father. He saw a god. A terrifying, vengeful, all-powerful god he had tried to defy. He slid off the sofa. He didn't just kneel. He crawled. He crawled across the worn, faded carpet, the carpet he had planned to sell, and grabbed at the hem of my simple retiree trousers. "Dad," he sobbed. They were real tears this time. Not the tears of a son who had lost his father-in-law's respect. They were the primal, terrified tears of a man who had just discovered he was trapped, exposed, and utterly ruined by a power he could not comprehend. "Dad, please. Please, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." He was clinging to my leg, his face buried in my trousers. I was in debt. I was so deep in debt. Gregory, Adler, he was pressuring me. I was desperate. I didn't know what else to do. "Please, Dad, I'll do anything. I'll pay it back. I'll work for you. I'll sweep the floors. I'll be your driver, anything. Please, just don't let them take me to jail. Please, Dad. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I waited. I let him cry. I let him beg. I let the sound of his pathetic sobbing fill the room, a counterpoint to Nicole's hysterical wails. Then I spoke. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise like a razor. "Stand up, Derek." He flinched at the coldness. He looked up, his face a mask of tears and snot. He slowly, shakily got to his feet. You forgive me," he whispered, his voice full of a desperate, pathetic hope. "No." His face crumpled. "Your love is worthless." I said, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "Your apologies are worthless. They are not apologies for your actions. They are the panic of a man who has been caught. You are not sorry for what you did. You are sorry that I am not the poor old man you thought I was. I looked at him. My son. My greatest failure. You had a choice. You have always had a choice. For 45 years. When you were drowning in debt, you could have come to me. You could have come to your father, the history teacher, and you could have said, "Dad, I failed. I made mistakes. I need help." I stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the cold radiating from me. And do you know what I would have done, Derek? I would have helped you. I would have paid your debts. I would have given you anything, because I am your father. His face contorted in a new, more profound agony. The agony of what if, the realization of his true mistake. But you didn't. I continued, my voice merciless. You didn't come for help. You came to steal. And when stealing was too hard, you decided to kill. I let that word hang in the air between us. You didn't just try to kill a frail old woman. You tried to kill my wife. You left her alone in a room to die of thirst. For that, Derek, there is no forgiveness. There is no family. There is only justice. No. Dad, please. He begged, reaching for me. I stepped back out of his reach. Everything, I said, is over. And as if summoned by my very words, as if the universe itself was waiting for my command, there was a loud, firm knock on the front door. It was not the frantic pounding of a relative. It was the heavy, official, patient knock of authority. Derek and Nicole froze. "Who is that?" Nicole whispered, her hysteria vanishing, replaced by a new cold dread. Harrison walked past them, his face as impassive as ever. He opened the front door. 2 uniformed police officers stood on the porch, their hands resting on their belts. "Mr. Harrison?" the lead officer asked. "Yes, we're ready for you." "Derek Shaw, Nicole Shaw," the officer asked, stepping into the room. "You are both under arrest." I sat in the 3rd row of the courtroom. It was exactly 6 weeks after Derek's arrest. Carol was beside me. She wasn't in a wheelchair anymore. She was sitting upright. Her hand was steady. Her eyes were clear. She looked magnificent. The room was packed. Our story, thanks to Harrison's precise media release, had exploded. It wasn't just local news. This was national. The billionaire in hiding story. The son who starved his mother story. The cameras flashed like lightning as Derek and Nicole were let in. They looked small. The $3,000 suit and designer dress were gone, replaced by cheap, ill-fitting clothes their public defenders had probably sourced from a discount store. Without my money, without Adler's money, they were nothing. They were exactly the pathetic old folks they had always feared becoming. Derek looked at me. His eyes were hollow. He looked for a sign, for pity, for a last-minute rescue. I looked through him. The prosecutor, Ada Hernandez, was a sharp, focused man in his 40s. He didn't just want to win. He wanted to annihilate them. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Hernandez began, his voice echoing in the silent room. "This is not a complicated case. This is not a case about nuanced family dynamics or misunderstandings. This is a case about greed. Pure, simple, and cold. It is a case about a son who looked at his aging parents and saw not family, but an obstacle to be removed." He started with the evidence. It was methodical, brutal. First, the forged power of attorney. A forensics expert took the stand. The signature of Martin Shaw, while a competent forgery, shows clear signs of digital replication and tracing. It is 100% fraudulent. Next, the financial records. An agent from the SEC, a stern woman in a government blue suit, took the stand. She detailed Derek's 6 months of unemployment. She detailed the $300,000 in gambling debts. She detailed the shell company, the green tech fund that Derek had created to defraud investors. The defendant was desperate, she said. He had 0 income, and was facing a hard deadline from creditors. The reverse mortgage application on his parents' home filed with the forged POA was his first move. The public defender tried to object. "Objection, this is character assassination." "It is motive, Your Honor," Hernandez countered smoothly. "And it is fact." Overruled. Then Hernandez played the audio. My living room filled with the jury's speakers. Nicole's voice sharp and greedy. "We handle her. We make her disappear." Derek's voice, my son's voice, cold and impatient. "How long can she last without water? 3 days. 4. By the time Dad gets back, he'll find his confused, senile wife dead in her bed. A tragedy. He'll be so heartbroken. He'll sign anything." A woman in the jury box, a grandmother herself, put her hand over her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears of rage. I looked at Derek. He was staring at his hands. But Hernandez wasn't finished. He called his star witness. "The prosecution calls Gregory Adler to the stand." The courtroom buzzed. Adler, the ruined mogul, walked to the stand. He had aged 10 years. His empire was gone, liquidated by my bank. He had lost everything. The only thing he had left was his hatred for the man who had exposed him as a fool. He had been granted immunity on several fraud charges in exchange for his testimony against his son-in-law. "Mr. Adler," Hernandez said, "did the defendant Derek Shaw ever discuss his parents with you?" Adler looked at Derek. It was the look of a god contemplating an insect he was about to crush. "He did." Adler's voice was a low growl. "He was always complaining about them. He told me they were dead weight. He said they were pathetic. He called his father a senile old fool." "Why did he tell you this?" "He was trying to impress me," Adler sneered. "He knew I don't respect weakness. He was performing, bragging about how he was cutting ties with his past, how he was ruthless enough to be in my world. He was a fool trying to play a game he didn't understand." "Did he ever mention his mother, Carol Shaw?" "He mentioned that she was an ongoing problem that would soon be resolved." I watched Nicole. She was staring at her father, her face a mask of betrayal. "Daddy." "No," she whispered. Her own father was burying her just to get his own revenge on Derek. "Thank you, Mr. Adler. No further questions." The defense was desperate. They had no case, they had no evidence, so they did the only thing they could. They turned on each other. Derek's lawyer put him on the stand. It was a pathetic performance. He cried. He blubbered. He pointed a shaking finger at his own wife. I didn't know what to do," he sobbed. "I was drowning in debt. I was scared." "And she?" He looked at Nicole. "She told me I was weak, Shaw. She told me my parents were pathetic, and that I should just take what was rightfully mine. She gave me the idea. She planned the whole thing. She was the one who researched the sleeping pills. She was the one who said leaving my mother alone was the cleanest way. I just went along. I was scared of her." Nicole stood up so fast her chair crashed backward onto the floor. "You liar!" she shrieked, her voice echoing. "You cowardly lying worm!" "Order!" the judge yelled. "Mrs. Shaw, sit down, or you will be held in contempt." Then it was her turn. Her lawyer, seeing his client had just been thrown under the bus, called Nicole to the stand. The mask was gone. The fake, polished heiress was gone. All that was left was venom. "He is lying," she said, her voice cold and dead. "Every word. He was the one obsessed with their money. He was the one who complained every single day that they wouldn't just die already and leave him the house. He was the one who planned the fall in the garden. He was the one who researched how long it takes an elderly person with Parkinson's to die of thirst. I just agreed with him. I was trying to be a supportive wife. It was his plan. They were tearing each other apart, spitting every poisoned secret, every bitter resentment, exposing the rotten core of their marriage for the jury to see. They weren't a family. They weren't even partners in crime. They were just two rats, trapped in a bucket, climbing over each other's backs to escape the inevitable. And then the prosecution called its final witness. The prosecution calls Carol Shaw. The courtroom went silent. Carol stood. She walked past Derek, past Nicole without a single glance. She was helped onto the witness stand. She looked frail, but her eyes were like steel. "Mrs. Shaw," Hernandez said, his voice gentle, "can you please tell the court what happened on the second day your husband was in the hospital?" Carol looked at the jury. "I waited," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I called for my son. I called for Derek. I knew he was supposed to come. He had promised. And the next day, he came, late at night. He stood in the doorway of my room. I begged him, Mr. Hernandez. I begged him for a glass of water. I told him I was so thirsty I thought I was dying. And what did he do, Mrs. Shaw? He smiled. He told me, 'Just rest, Mom. Everything is being taken care of.' And then what did he do? He took my emergency phone from the nightstand. He put it in his pocket. And then he left. And I heard the key turn in the lock. He locked me in." The woman in the jury box was openly weeping now. Derek's public defender stood up, his face pale. He knew he had to try. "Mrs. Shaw, you have Parkinson's, isn't that correct? You take several medications. Isn't it possible that you were confused, that perhaps you hallucinated?" Carol turned her gaze from the jury and looked for the first time directly at her son. Derek met her eyes and he flinched as if she had struck him. Carol looked back at the lawyer. "Do I sound confused to you?" she asked. "I was not confused. I was not hallucinating. I was thirsty. I was dying. And I know exactly who locked that door." She raised a trembling, elegant finger and pointed it directly at Derek. "It was my son. The son I raised. The son I loved." The public defender just stood there, speechless. He finally managed to whisper, "No. No further questions, Your Honor." The jury was out for less than 3 hours. It takes longer to choose a jury than it took them to convict my son. We were all standing when the foreman read the verdict. "On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, how do you find Cho? Guilty." I felt Carol's hand grip mine. It wasn't a squeeze of victory. It was a tremor of final agonizing loss. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, guilty. On the charge of felony forgery, guilty. On the charge of criminal elder abuse, guilty." Nicole was next. "On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, guilty. On the charge of criminal elder abuse, guilty." The judge, a formidable woman named Alani Santos, did not wait for a separate sentencing hearing. She proceeded immediately. She looked at Derek. "Mr. Shaw," she said, her voice filled with a cold, precise anger, "you did not just attempt to kill. You attempted to kill your mother. You did so not in a fit of passion, but as a calculated, cold-blooded business decision weighing her life against a vacation. You are a cancer on society. I sentence you to 30 years in the state penitentiary. No possibility of parole." She then turned to Nicole. "Mrs. Shaw, you were an active and willing participant. You stood by and watched a woman be starved to death, believing it would fund your lifestyle. For your role as accomplice in these heinous crimes, I sentence you to 15 years. I heard a sound, a high-pitched, inhuman wail. It was Nicole. She collapsed screaming, pulled down by the guards. Derek didn't make a sound. He just slumped forward, his head hitting the defense table with a dull, heavy thud. It was done. 6 months. 180 days since I sat in that courtroom and watched my son, my only child, look at me with hollow, defeated eyes as a judge sentenced him to 30 years in state prison. The air is different here. In New Hampshire, the silence isn't the suffocating sick quiet of that house in Ohio. It is a living, breathing silence filled with the cry of loons on the lake and the sound of the wind moving through the tall pines. This is our home, our real home. The one Derek never knew existed. It is not a palace. Gregory Adler would have found it far too simple. It is all clean lines, warm cedar, and massive panes of glass that blur the line between the inside world and the wild green and blue world outside. It is a fortress of peace built for thinking, not for showing off. Carol is sitting across from me. She is not in the wheelchair she used in the courtroom. She is curled up in a deep, comfortable leather armchair, her feet tucked beneath her, reading a book. The finest neurologists in the world, combined with the complete absence of constant low-level emotional and physical torment, have worked wonders. Her tremor is almost unnoticeable today. She looks content. We are not watching the morning news. We are watching a private high-definition feed on the large screen that retracts seamlessly into the stone fireplace. It's a live broadcast. A local county auction back in Ohio. On the screen, a fast-talking auctioneer is standing on the patchy front lawn of our old house. The other house, the shabby beige two-story suburban box that served as the stage for our 45-year lie. "We have 500,000, the auctioneer yells, his voice tinny through the speakers. "Do I hear 510? Yes, 510 from the gentleman on the phone. 510, it is going once, going twice." The camera hired by Harrison's team pans across the small yard. I see the exact spot in the garden where Derek left the rake for me to find. I see the top of the stairs through the front window, the stairs Carol accidentally fell down. It looks so small, so petty. A cheap, flimsy stage for such an expensive and ugly tragedy. Sold, the gavel cracks a sound that echoes with finality. For $510,000 to bidder 724. Mr. Harrison, sitting discreetly at a mahogany desk in the corner of the great room, taps a key on his laptop. "The funds are being wired, sir, as you instructed." I just nod. I watch the screen as the small crowd of onlookers disperses. Strangers are already walking toward the front door, their real estate agent unlocking the house my son tried to kill for. My old life being inspected by new owners. Carol lets out a long, slow sigh. It is not a sound of sadness. It is a sound of profound, weary release. She places her teacup down on the solid granite coaster beside her. "I never liked that house," she says, her voice perfectly clear, stronger than it has been in years. I look at her. In all the decades we lived there playing our roles, she never once complained. She was the perfect partner in my grand, foolish experiment. "It always felt cold," she continues, her eyes still on the screen. "Even in the middle of July. It felt like a costume, a role I could never take off. The carpets were cheap, and they always smelled faintly of mildew. The walls were so thin I could hear the neighbors arguing. I spent 40 years of my life making sure my coffee mug didn't leave a ring on a Formica countertop that was worth less than a single tire on Harrison's car." She turns her gaze from the screen and looks directly at me, her eyes sharp and knowing. It was the place where I had to pretend to be small. The place where I had to watch my son grow up, knowing I was lying to him with every breath I took. I hated it. I let out a breath I feel like I've been holding for half a century. Neither did I, my love. Neither did I. I walk over to the massive screen and press the button to turn it off. The image of the little beige house, the symbol of our deception, vanishes, replaced by a simple blank black screen. "But," I say, turning back to her, "it served its purpose." Carol raises an eyebrow. "Its purpose? It was a filter," I say, walking to the window, looking out at the calm, real, honest lake. "It was a test. We wanted to see what Derek would become if he believed he had to earn his own way. We wanted to see if his character was strong enough to exist without the cushion of wealth." I shake my head, the familiar bitter taste of failure rising in my throat. It turns out the house was the perfect bait. To us, it was a prop, a temporary stage set. But to him, and to Nicole, it was everything. It was the grand prize. It was the inheritance they were waiting for, the only thing they thought we had. I can picture Derek in his cell right now, his world reduced to gray concrete, and the hollow sound of his own regrets. They didn't see the memories we built there. I continue, my voice low. They didn't care about the family dinners. They didn't care about the woman who raised them. They only saw the equity. They tried to commit forgery, fraud, and ultimately murder, all for a $500,000 suburban house. I pause, the true agonizing irony of it all settling over me like a shroud. They had no idea. They were willing to destroy our lives and their own for a rounding error, for what I make in interest before my first cup of tea in the morning. Carol gets up from her chair and walks over to me. She stands beside me and we look out at the lake together. She slips her hand into mine. It's warm, strong, real. It showed us the truth, Martin, she whispers. It showed us what was really inside him, what we had somehow created. And it's better to know, even if the truth is this. I nod. Yes, it's better to know. My phone buzzes silently on the table. A text from Harrison. Auction finalized. Funds transferred successfully. The house is gone. The experiment is officially finally over. The last tie to that life has been severed. Harrison? I call out, my voice steady. Yes, sir. Confirm the transfer. All $510,000. Send it directly to the Carol Shaw Foundation for Victims of Elder Abuse. Mark it as the inaugural donation. Right away, sir. I turn to Carol and take her hand, pulling her away from the window. Come on, I say, managing a small, real smile. It's a beautiful day. Let's go down to the dock. Let's go home. The Ohio State Penitentiary is not Marbella. I know because I have funded 3 prison reform studies. The walls are not gold-leafed. They are cinder block painted a dull, soul-crushing beige. The air does not smell of sea salt and expensive cigars. It smells of bleach, sweat, and despair. This is Derek's new home. He has been there for 6 months. 6 months since the trial ended, since the gavel fell, since his world and Nicole's world were reduced to a 9 by 12-foot cell. In these 6 months, I am sure he has been doing what he always does. Calculating. He is a gambler after all. He is probably sitting in that cell running the numbers. He must be thinking that yes, he lost this round, but the game isn't over. He must believe that I, his father, his pathetic old father, will eventually soften. He must believe that blood is thicker than water. He must believe that 30 years is a long time, but that when he gets out, the inheritance, the real inheritance he now knows about, will be waiting. He is, after all, my only son, my only heir. He must believe that my anger, however righteous, is temporary, but my love as a father is permanent. He is about to learn, finally, that my love was conditional. It was conditional on him being a decent human being. He received the letter today. It did not come from me. I will never speak to him or write his name again. It came from the law firm that manages the Martin Shaw Family Trust. It was delivered by a certified prison guard. I can picture the scene perfectly. He would be in the drab visitor's room or perhaps the prison library. He would see the expensive, heavy-stock, cream-colored envelope. He would see the engraved letterhead of the law firm. His heart would leap. He would think, this is it. This is the rescue, the olive branch, the moment his real father finally steps in to fix everything, to buy him the best lawyers, to appeal his case, to pull the strings of power he now knows I possess. He would open the envelope, his hands trembling. He would see the formal legal language. He would see his own name, Mr. Derek Shaw. and then he would read, "Dear Mr. Shaw, this letter is to formally notify you of the final disposition of the assets contained within the Martin Shaw Family Trust, of which you were until this morning the sole named beneficiary." I wonder if he stopped there. I wonder if he had to read that word twice. Were, past tense. As per the bylaws of the trust specifically, Clause 72, which details the immediate and irrevocable forfeiture of all assets in the event of a felony conviction, especially one related to harm fraud, or intent to kill the primary grantors, you have been formally disinherited. All your claims to the trust and to the estate of Martin and Carol Shaw are nullified, permanently. I can see his face, the confusion, the disbelief, the cold rising panic. He would be thinking, but where does the money go? If not me, then who? The letter would continue. As of 9 a.m. this morning, the full assets of the trust valued at the time of transfer at $1.2 billion. I insisted they include the number. I wanted him to see in black and white the precise itemized cost of a glass of water for his mother. Have been fully and completely transferred. The entire sum has been used to create and permanently endow a new independent charitable organization. And this is the part I am most proud of. This is the true justice. This new organization, which will be the largest of its kind in the United States, will be dedicated to a single mission, providing legal aid, investigative services, and safe housing for elderly individuals who are the victims of financial or physical abuse at the hands of their own families. He would be frozen now, his blood turning to ice. The foundation is named in honor of the woman you tried to murder. It is and will forever be known as the Carol Shaw Foundation for Victims of Elder Abuse. I wanted him to understand that. I wanted him to know for the next 30 years, as he sits in that cell, that every time a son like him tries to steal from his parents, every time a daughter-in-law like Nicole tries to forge a signature, it will be his money, the money he betrayed his soul for, that will fund the lawyers, the investigators, and the private detectives who will hunt them down and bring them to justice. His greed, his evil, it will now fund an army of protectors for generations to come. His only legacy will be the complete and total destruction of other men exactly like himself. But I wasn't finished. However, the letter concludes, "Your father, Mr. Martin Shaw, has authorized one final provision for your personal benefit. A separate, non-transferable trust fund in the amount of $50,000 has been established in your name." I can see it, that flicker of hope in his gambler's eyes. $50,000, he could use it for commissary, for better food, for protection, for lawyers to appeal his case. The old man had softened. The old man did still love him. These funds are restricted. The letter clarifies. They cannot be used for any legal fees. They cannot be used for personal items, commissary, or any cash distribution. The funds are designated exclusively for enrollment in and completion of any available in-prison educational programs and mandatory psychological therapy. Specifically, Mr. Shaw has stipulated that the funds be used for courses in applied ethics, moral philosophy, and cognitive behavioral therapy for narcissistic personality disorder. Funds will be released directly to the providers upon our verification of your successful completion of each course. He wishes you the best in your journey of personal development. That is my final lesson. I have taken away his inheritance, but I have given him an education. I have taken away his freedom, but I have given him therapy. He has 30 years to think about his choices, 30 years to study, 30 years to perhaps finally become a good man. I have given him everything he needs. He has nothing left to blame but himself. It took another month for the first letter to arrive from the Ohio State Penitentiary. I recognized the blocky, angry handwriting on the envelope instantly. It was addressed to me, Martin Shaw, at our post office box in New Hampshire. Harrison's team had screened it for any physical threats before forwarding it to me. I was in my study, a room walled with cedar and glass, looking out over the still dark water of the lake. Carol was in the next room, reading by the fire. I could hear the faint, comforting sound of her turning a page. I held the letter. It felt thin, brittle. I felt no anxiety, no dread. I felt nothing at all. It was simply the last piece of data from a failed experiment, the final report from a project that had been terminated. I opened it with a silver letter opener that Derek had once mocked as pretentious during a Christmas visit. The letter was not a plea for forgiveness. It was not an apology. It was a testament to his own magnificent, unadulterated, and undiluted rage. It began without a salutation. You think you won. You think you're smart. You sat there in that courtroom and watched them destroy me, and you smiled. I hadn't smiled, but I understood why he would see it that way. You are a monster. You are not a father. You are a liar. A sick, twisted old man who played God with my life. My entire life was your game. You let me struggle. You let me think we were just normal middle-class people. You watched me drown in debt, when you could have fixed it with a snap of your fingers. You let me believe that house was all we had. You let me believe that was the only way out. This is your fault, not mine. Do you hear me? Your fault. The words were pressed so hard into the cheap prison issue paper that the pen had torn through it in several places. You complain about what I did to Carol. What about what you did to me? You hid billions from me. You let me live a lie. You let me marry Nicole knowing her family was a fraud. You watched me humiliate myself in front of Adler. You didn't just let me fail. You designed my failure. You could have helped me at any time. You could have paid the $300,000. It was nothing to you. It was a rounding error. But you chose to let me squirm. You chose to let me get so desperate that I... He couldn't even write the words. He couldn't admit to his own choices. She deserved it anyway. The letter continued, and my blood went cold. She was weak, whining, always needing something. She was just like you, pathetic. The two of you with your secret morality, you looked down on me my whole life. You thought I wasn't good enough. You thought I was a failure because I liked money, because I wanted the things you pretended not to have. Well, you were the failure, old man. You were the failure as a father. You taught me nothing. You gave me nothing. And then you punished me for trying to take what you owed me, what was mine by right. Nicole was right. You are a bitter, selfish old man. You would rather give my money, my inheritance, to a bunch of strangers than to your own son. You're trying to erase me. You're trying to make me pay. But I won't pay. 30 years, that's nothing. I'll get out. I'm smarter than you. I'm smarter than them. And when I get out, I'm coming for you. I'm coming for what's mine. I don't care what you do with the foundation. I will dismantle it. I will sue. I will tell the world the real story. The story of the billionaire who lied to his son and drove him to desperation. You didn't save anyone. You just destroyed your own family. I hope you're happy. I hope you and that old woman enjoy your lake house while your only son rots in here because of you. I hate you. I will always hate you. It was not signed. I read the letter a second time just to be sure, just to analyze the data. The diagnosis was clear: terminal narcissism, a complete and total inability to accept responsibility. He had learned nothing. I had failed. My experiment, my 45-year endeavor to build a good man, had produced this rattling, hateful, self-pitying child. Slowly, methodically, I folded the letter. Then I crumpled it in my fist. I squeezed it, feeling the paper compress into a tight, hard ball. I felt no rage. I felt no sadness. I felt pity. A vast, empty ocean of pity for the small, broken thing my son had become. I walked out of the study and into the great room. Carol was looking up from her book, her expression calm, questioning. She had seen me read the letter. I walked to the massive stone fireplace. The fire had died down hours ago, leaving a bed of gray, cold ash. I dropped the crumpled ball of paper onto the ashes. It sat there, a small white knot of hate in a sea of gray. Carol stood up and walked over to me. She didn't ask what the letter said. She didn't need to. She simply placed her warm, steady hand on top of mine as I rested it on the mantel. We stood there for a long moment, watching the crumpled paper. "I gave him 45 years to learn how to be a man, Carol," I said. My voice quiet, just a murmur in the vast, silent room. Now he has 30 years to think about it." Carol sighed. It was the sound of a mother's heart, a sound of grief that would never fully heal, a sound I knew I was responsible for. "We lost him, Martin," she whispered. "We lost our son." I turned my head to look at her clear, strong, honest eyes, the eyes of the woman who had agreed to this gamble with me, the woman who had almost paid for my experiment with her life. I gently squeezed her hand. "No, Carol," I said, and my voice was firm, because this was the one truth I was absolutely sure of. "We lost him a long, long time ago. What we did, what you did by surviving, we saved thousands of others." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and together we stood there looking not at the cold fireplace but out the window at the clean, honest, open water of the lake. 2 years have passed. 2 years since the trial, since the shouting, since the final resounding crack of the judge's gavel. The silence in our life is no longer the silence of a tomb. It is the peace of this lake house in New Hampshire. The Carol Shaw Foundation for Victims of Elder Abuse is not just a name on a legal document anymore. It is a force. This month, it funded the opening of its 3rd new shelter, a safe house in Arizona. It has provided legal aid for over 200 cases of family fraud. Our story, it turned out, was not unique. It was just the one that finally had the resources to fight back. Carol and I, we live quietly. We hike. The woods here are deep and old, and we walk for miles not saying much, just listening to the sound of the wind. Her health is better than it has been in a decade. The best doctors, the best care, and most importantly, the absence of poison, both the chemical and the emotional kind, has worked miracles. Her tremor is almost gone. She laughs again. A real deep laugh that I had not heard in years. We never speak of Derek. We never mention his name. He is a ghost, a failed experiment, a chapter we have closed. The rage has faded, leaving behind this Hein. Only a dull, distant ache. We have our new life. Our quiet final chapter. We are done. Or so I thought. A second letter from the Ohio State Penitentiary arrived last week. It was not like the first one. The handwriting on the envelope was not the angry, violent scrawl I remembered. It was hesitant, careful. I opened it in my study alone. Inside, there was no page torn from a legal pad, no words pressed so hard they ripped the paper. There was just a single small piece of prison-issue notepaper, and 2 words. 2 words written in a shaky, almost childlike script. "I'm sorry." I stared at those 2 words for a very long time. I'm sorry. Was it genuine? Was it the first flicker of remorse? Or was it just the first assignment from the cognitive behavioral therapy course the trust fund is paying for? Was it a strategic move, a new manipulation? I realized as I stood there that it didn't matter. It wasn't for me. It was for him. It was a start. Maybe after 2 years in silence, my son was finally beginning his 45-year journey of learning how to be a man. I folded the small piece of paper. I did not crumple it this time. I placed it in the back of my desk drawer underneath old, unimportant things. I closed the drawer. I walked out of my study and onto the wide cedar porch. The sun was setting over the lake, painting the water in strokes of orange and deep purple. Carol was waiting for me. She had 2 cups of tea steaming on the small table between our chairs. She didn't ask about the letter. She just smiled and handed me my cup. I sat down. I took her hand. It was warm. I breathed in the cold, clean air of the mountains. And for the first time in my entire 74 years of life, I truly felt retired. This story teaches us a painful but powerful lesson. True family is built on loyalty and respect, not just shared blood. For 25 years, Henry and Hilda's silence intended to protect their son was mistaken for weakness. It only allowed his greed to grow into a monstrous betrayal that cost one son his life and the other his humanity. We learn that kindness without boundaries is not a virtue. It can be an enablement, and that sometimes the hardest truth is the only path to justice and eventually to peace. What would you have done in Henry and Hilda's place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more life stories.